Welcome to the Higher Road Podcast, a DriverReach and FreightWaves production. I'm your host, Jeremy Reymer. On this show, I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insight to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges, driver recruiting and retention. This week, I'm excited to be joined by a great friend, Max Farrell, co-founder and CEO of WorkHound, in my opinion, the best company out there addressing the challenges of driver retention. Great to see you, Max. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well, Jeremy.
Well, this is the inaugural episode of the Higher Road Podcast. And I know in trucking, especially podcasts are blowing up all over the place. But interestingly, for such an important topic as recruiting and retention, this is only the second one that I know of. The other is Recruit and Retain Trucking Edition by another great friend, Chad Hendricks from Brand Outcomes. So thanks, Chad, for the inspiration. And I'll start, Max. I've got a question for you, since we're talking about retention here. Yeah. True or false? The best way to recruit drivers is to keep the ones you've got.
This is true. Biggest true, easiest T-ball question. Recruiting is way easier if you have great people on your team.
Well, you pass. So very good. Good job. We will continue. The driver life cycle is circular, right? There's no defined beginning. Everything that happens during that life cycle affects what comes next. And so to some, retention is really more of an afterthought. So I really want to highlight retention and its relevance to the life cycle and how it also plays a role in recruiting. I think it's good open communication is very important and certainly can solve a world of problems. And so if you could share a little bit about the importance of driver feedback, of soliciting driver feedback and the feedback loop.
Well, we're in 2021 and we all want and need to be data-driven companies. So you think about the great innovative companies out there, they're using truck data to make business decisions. They're using FreightWaves sonar data to determine how are they going to price things in the market. And so you have all of this machine data and spreadsheet data guiding business decisions. Why not use people data to make people decisions? And so driver feedback is that great insight. Quite frankly, it's a gold mine because it's your eyes and ears on the front lines telling you what are the highs and lows about working in that company. And also it's the key ingredient of figuring out how do we make the business a better version of itself.
I think you hit on something with data. And, there's a lot of companies I know that have at least attempted to, conduct surveys. And, but I think too often not enough is done, or maybe sometimes nothing is done with that data. How is WorkHound helping companies in terms of incorporating feedback into the driver life cycle?
Well, when we started the company 5 years ago, we looked around the industry to see what all was out there as far as getting perspective from drivers. And we saw that there were annual surveys, which are too slow because in trucking, a guy can be happy on Tuesday, fed up on Wednesday, and quit by the end of the week. Or they do exit interviews, which are basically an autopsy because you're already looking at an empty truck. And so what I took away from those sorts of exercises was that getting feedback is good, doing something about it is better, but then communicating what you did to your people is the cherry on the sundae. And so what we work really hard at WorkHound is figuring out how do we get this data and then find multiple ways to do something about it. So we create habits to steadily change our operations based on what our people are saying.
Now, this is anonymous, though, typically. Is that correct?
Yes. So with WorkHound, all the feedback we receive from drivers is anonymous unless a driver chooses to reveal his or her identity. What we have learned is that in this industry, the ugly truth is that there is a fear of retaliation, that guys are fearful that if they share what's on their mind, they will be punished or there will be consequences because they shared. And so we needed to build a platform where there was we could achieve honesty first and foremost. So we've built a part of our platform where, let's say a guy says, I'm about to quit because you said my wife would be on my insurance, but she's not. I'm getting the runaround. I'm done. The company's like, well, we can fix this. So we built a process where all the company has to do is click a button. The driver gets a notification that says, hey, the folks at TruckCo saw your comment. Are you willing to reveal who you are? And what we know about human nature is usually we just want to get our problem fixed instead of sitting through orientation somewhere else. And so that's actually happened at a company where the guy got connected, found out his wife was on his insurance. There was just confusion about paperwork. and the company got to retain one of their best people. And so that's one of the big things we want to do from day one with companies is act on that sort of data.
Well, and to that point, you talk about soliciting feedback and anonymously or not. If the company doesn't do anything with that information, would you argue that it's worse to even solicit the information and do nothing with it than to ever even ask in the first place?
That's always a catch-22 because what we have to do is create a habit loop. And so the habit loop that we try to create with companies is listen, act, respond. So listen to your people, find different ways to act on it, even if it's lightweight. As lightweight as somebody had an issue, you send them a notification about that communication. Because we can still have anonymous communication, even if a company doesn't know who a driver is, and respond to their people. Tell them what they did based on the data that they're getting from their drivers. And so by setting up that habit loop, it does overcome that burden of making a big strategic change is really hard. So we focus on small wins early on to get in the groove of actually we can do something about this information.
Well, in soliciting that information, then I assume it's important that it be done consistently, right? It's not once a year we send out a message, an annual survey or something like that. That's probably not going to cut it. Is that what you're saying?
For sure. Well, you think about the companies that did their annual survey in February of what do they think 2020 is going to look like. And
it's going to be fantastic.
A month later, that data is invalidated. It was non-existent. And so what we've seen is that we work with innovative carriers around the country that week after week, day after day, they're getting the honest insights of their people and seeing how the needs evolve. So in March through May, we saw a spike in comments about COVID, and companies expedited and upped the amount of communication they were providing to the drivers because of the uncertainties that they were sharing. And so companies have been able to react faster to the needs of their people based on getting a real-time pulse on what the drivers are saying.
Now, you mentioned, 2021. We started this year.
We're here.
Yes, we made it. I mean, nothing has changed, frankly. The last digit of the year is different, but that's about it. The issues that we're dealing with right now are exactly the same that we've been dealing with for the last 10 months or so. And obviously your background, it looks like you are working from home, as am I. And so this is the dynamic that we're dealing with now. But the good news is the industry has been strong, has been able to be resilient. And so that's encouraging, and it's great that we are recognized, the truck drivers are recognized as essential workers. That's super encouraging, and I'm hoping that we can continue with that momentum that the industry has from just from an image standpoint. I think that's really important. Now, and it's harder. I've seen and talked to many people in the last several months, and it is harder right now than I've ever seen it, and most people are having a much harder time recruiting drivers than they ever have. And my question is, how can a process of soliciting driver feedback, how can that help driver recruiting?
Well, there's several different ways. So first off, in trucking, we have a really bad habit of always trying to fix what's broken instead of celebrating what's working well. And about a third of the data that we get from drivers is positive. And so, yes, we need to address the negative comments or the concerns that are out there. But at the same time, we need to celebrate the comments that are going well. So we see companies that if a driver says, I love working here, my driver manager, Tammy, has been excellent to work with. She works around my schedule to make sure I'm set up for success. That's not only an attaboy that you can send out to any fleet manager, but that's also material that you can use on social media to share. These are direct quotes from our people that love working here. Don't you want to have this kind of work experience? And then also, no offense to the driver recruiters out there, but the best recruiter in the business is a happy driver. And so for us, we have a process in our system where if a driver is having a great day, they can refer another driver to join the company, because if Bob Jones joined the company and 3 months in, he's like, this is my carrier of choice. he's going to tell his other buddies that have been grumbling. And pretty much every carrier out there has a referral bonus. So why not capitalize on that from your happy drivers?
Yeah, you talk about companies that have a referral program and offer a referral bonus. I think it's one of the most underused, even though you said everybody has one, almost everybody has one. It's one that they probably don't pay out very much on, and it's not taken advantage of nearly as much as it could and should be. Such a great opportunity. To your point, a recruiter's
100%.
Recruiter's great at selling the company and so on. That's what they should do, right?
Right.
But it's so much more impactful when that comes from a fellow driver, a peer who says, "Look, this is a great company to work for. We provide input all the time, and they're able to, keep this ongoing dialogue with us. And when we share things that we think aren't right, they'll listen and they'll fix it a lot of times and communicate that with us. And so there's a sense of empowerment that exists there. So I think that's a great point. Now, we were talking about 2020, and I think I saw, it might have been last quarter, there was an ebook on driver burnout that I think that you might have, either you put it out or put it out in partnership with somebody. How would you describe driver burnout?
Well, first off, driver burnout is just like any burnout that a lot of us felt in 2020. It's this sense of exhaustion, jadedness, and just to the point where we're almost turned off towards our work because we're just fed up and done, and not being able to call it out soon enough that feeling of burnout happens. So driver burnout happens when you're dealing with the frustrations of the industry. The challenge that drivers face is that the entire burden of the supply chain is on the shoulders of a driver, yet many of those variables they can't control because you have hours of service, construction, shipper times, planners getting a load set up for them, equipment having issues. There's so many different things that are out of the control of a driver that can get really frustrating. And so what happens is that you get tired, and then you start to get really jaded about your work, and then you reach peak burnout when you become a negative source of energy to a company, and can actually be a strain on the company culture, and quite frankly be a safety risk. So it's something that we've all experienced, whether we're working from home or we're on the road. We just have seen it and thought it's really important to continue to highlight it, especially after that great study from the University of Arkansas supply chain group a few months ago.
Well, the dynamic that you described, that's in a normal year. Now add a global pandemic onto that, and what does that do to exacerbate, burnout and the challenges that people had? I remember I had an interview last year with a good friend of mine who's a driver, professional driver, who shared things that I didn't even think about. I mean, there's no place to even use the restroom. I mean, anywhere you go. And there, that was just one of many things that he brought up that just really opened my eyes to the challenges that they faced above and beyond a typical year,
Right.
normal year. So what are the things that companies can do? Any advice that you can suggest that companies can do to help from a driver burnout perspective?
Well, so first off, I do want to call out, I think companies started to move the needle in a really significant way in the past year, where mental health was a part of conversations of trucking executives in the way that we have never heard it mentioned in the past 9 months. And so I think that's really powerful that a company's most valuable asset, its people, is being talked about as far as how do we maximize the best version of oneself inside an organization instead of treating people like numbers, which trucking companies often get a bad rap for. So first off, I think that's been a tremendous step forward. And then as a result of it, companies have realized they need to continue to be a driver's co-pilot to really attend to the needs of them. So when COVID broke out and as unrest spread throughout the country, companies were checking in more with drivers. They were communicating more often about what was going on, and they created avenues to listen to their people because loneliness is a big issue that's faced in this industry, and it's important to take the time to just listen to your people and let them have an avenue to share what's on their mind. So those are some of the things that we've started to see is just being more empathetic, calling out mental health, and having pathways to listen and act on the perspective of drivers.
Well, that's an excellent point, and I would say as much as that pertains to retention, that also is relevant from a recruiting perspective. And I think this year gave us such a great opportunity to be more empathetic, to realize that we're in this. I mean, it's a global pandemic where hundreds of thousands of fellow Americans have died, and across the world, millions have died. And we're all impacted. Early on, you hear stories, and maybe this one person that you heard got sick. But now I think almost everybody has somebody in their life that has certainly gotten it and maybe been okay. But some that, I know people who have died, and I know people who have lost multiple family members. And the reason why I bring that up is what an opportunity it affords us as humans to interact with others and share empathy and be real and be more genuine and have better conversations with people from a recruiting perspective. And certainly as an employer, whether it's with drivers or owner operators, engaging with them in a way that can, there's just layers that you can remove. It allows for much better conversation. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good point on mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Companies really need to go above and beyond this year because people are going to remember how they were treated during this whole experience. And are you going to be the company that went above and beyond to take care of your people, or are you going to be the company that shortchanged your people? That will be your company's brand. And as you've talked about in the past, Jeremy, recruiting is sales, and your brand is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, what a great opportunity we have. And we still have it, by the way. I speak in terms of 2020, but until this is gone, and not that it's not a charade. It's just, it gives us the opportunity that we didn't have otherwise. It was not so obvious. So you as a retention company, you have a competitor in the retention space that was recently acquired. And I'm just curious if you would share your thoughts on that. I thought when I saw that, my interest was piqued, and I wondered, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it was exciting for us because it validates the market. We've been at this for over 5 years. We've got tens of thousands of drivers on the platform, and to see companies change their culture and change the way they interact with drivers based on what we're doing in the industry is really rewarding. So for us, we're confident that if we just keep doing our thing and keep addressing the needs of our customers, fortunately, we've got great innovative carriers that we work with. They're telling us what we need to build next to be successful. So we keep doing that. We're in a really great position.
Yeah, and the good companies obviously to partner with, and they obviously care and they want to make a difference and move the needle. And it's encouraging that I thought the same thing when I saw that happen. It was sort of a validation of sorts. So
absolutely.
Now, kind of shifting gears here a little bit. Not many people know this about you, but you're also a rapper, right? That's your side hustle, I guess, right? So
it's certainly
been something that's helped you?
That got me into business.
Is that how helpful has that been to your business? Do you ever you've closed any deals with a rap as a hip hop artist?
So first off, for those of you listening, don't you see it now? You see it, right?
Now I do.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So first off, hip hop is the most entrepreneurial genre there is out there. If you look into hip hop and the history of it, there's 4 elements of hip hop, but what's often said is that there's an unofficial 5th element, which is the business side of hip hop. And it's true, hip hop was born out of an art, and it's become a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so in high school, when I was really fascinated by doing music, I realized that if I wanted to put together my own shows, I needed to book the venue, find the other artists, find the engineers to record my music, contact the press to get them to write about the show, sell the CDs at the show, sell tickets at the door. So really, hip hop was my first foray into building some entity of a business. just because you had to learn all these different skills and hustle. So yeah, as far as fast forwarding to WorkHound now, it's still been helpful, just as far as wheeling and dealing to get a company off the ground, and also just to have moments of serendipity. So I don't know if many folks know this, but when we started the company, I did a ride along across the country with a guy who calls himself the Turntable Trucker. So we rode from Iowa to Los Angeles. So I slept in the truck, ate in the truck, showered at truck stops, got to see the beauty and the ugly of the road. But at the end, when we were detained for a short, brief 7-hour period, we had time to kill. So he was DJing in the back of this Peterbilt. I was freestyle rapping, and there's a video out there. So Jeremy, maybe you can link them to it.
Oh, for sure I will. I'm not going to put you on the spot to ask you to drop some science right now or anything, but
no, people want to see the video on the Peterbilt. That's more authentic to it. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that I love to be able to bring to the table is, blend business with hip hop and just this industry, because there's a lot of great stories out there like that. And, Charles, the Turntable Trucker is I think the only DJ on 18 wheels, and he's a damn good DJ too.
The turntables might wobble, but it don't fall down.
That's right.
So, well, that's cool. That's something that, obviously I've known that for a long time, but not sure who else does. Now you mentioned some CDs. Did you ever make any?
Yeah, of course I did CDs. Like I used to push CDs in school, sell them out of the trunk of my car. Fortunately, everything's digital now, so I've got some stuff on Spotify and YouTube if folks are looking for some tracks to bump to.
Yeah, we might have to share some links to that as well. So
why not?
I know we've talked about 2020 and what a crazy year that's been, and it seemed to never end. I felt like when daylight savings came in the fall and we added an hour, like another hour to the year, please. And then also I was afraid. I fell asleep before the ball dropped on midnight, on New Year's. And I was afraid that I could possibly wake up the next morning and see that it's actually not January 1st, but it's December 32nd. And it just won't end. I know that's the way kind of it felt like. But we are in a new year, obviously. And while we still have a lot of the same challenges, I'm curious if you have any, predictions maybe on what we can expect to see in 2021 as it relates to the driver shortage and any challenges with retaining drivers. By the way, I asked you the same question in February. You failed miserably.
Yeah, prediction questions in January are, especially now. Like who wants to make a prediction anymore? I think despite the challenges in the past year, a lot of good came from it. And I do think that there will be a continuation of some of the positive things that have happened. So first off, trucking has gotten a bad rap in the past about being technologically behind the times. And in the past year, companies cut out that decision-making timeline and expedited a lot of tech investment in technology. To be a innovative, cutting-edge company, and quite frankly, coming on the point of being a cutting-edge industry. So I think we'll see a continuation of that, where companies are making quick decisions to better their business, and they're very focused on how does this thing help me solve a problem instead of falling in love with some shiny solution. And so the companies that are vendors to the industry that are solving real problems will continue to benefit really well. Whereas if it's just a neat, shiny tool, it may struggle in 2021. So that's the first thing. In regards to the driver shortage, I believe the industry will continue to highlight the fact that drivers were seen as knights of the road for the first time in a long while outside of just the industry, and use that to start to bring in some new people to explore trucking as a potential career path. And now that there is a vaccine out there, I do believe more people will be willing to take on new things. So excited about that opportunity. And then as far as retention, companies are realizing it's a heck of a lot easier to keep the people that you have. And more companies are making that commitment to figure out how do we become a better version of ourselves by supporting our people that we work so hard to bring in the door. So those are a couple of thoughts. But again, anybody that made predictions at the beginning of 2020 was off. So take everything with
they
a
didn't
grain
have
of
global
salt.
pandemic, I think, on the bingo card.
Was not on the bingo card. No.
Now, and you make a great point in terms of the adoption of technology, and trucking historically has been more or less technologically deficient, at least in the areas of recruiting and retention, and from HR and personnel. And so I've seen that as well, and I shared a lot in 2020 about necessity being the mother of adoption, from a technology standpoint. And that's something that I recognize. Now, there's one thing I want to ask is I don't have a WorkHound mug, and I need one of these so that I can do some product placement as I take a sip of water from time to time.
Oh, so that's not coffee in there? See, our mugs are only for coffee.
Oh, well, it was with coffee this morning.
Okay,
So,
fair enough.
no,
I will work with our team to get you a mug, sir. You deserve nothing but the finest of WorkHound mugs.
I would appreciate that. So thanks again, Max, for joining me today. It's always great to catch up with you. And just
Absolutely.
real quick, what's the best way for companies interested in learning more about WorkHound? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so simply just go to our website, workhound.com. So work and hound like the dog. You can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Certainly go on Google, search about us, read about how companies have seen up to a 30% decrease in driver turnover. And our team would love to talk to you. This is a passion of ours. And if we can help your people have a voice within your company, we want to make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Max. And thanks for joining me for another episode of the Higher Road Podcast. Remember to follow along at driverreach.com/podcast. And if you have a question, a comment, or a suggestion for a podcast guest, you can drop us a note at podcast@driverreach.com. Until next time, take the higher road.